What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Heroes Veritas podcast. I'm your host, Tim Bass, and this is where we give you the tips and the tools to become the king of your life. I appreciate you all being here. Before we get started, as always, just a little bit of admin. If you haven't checked out last week's podcast, I recommend you do. In that podcast, we talk about manners. That was probably our favorite podcast so far. I'd love to hear from you. If you liked it, didn't like it, thought I was off my rocker, either way, I love connecting with you. Those that reached out, really appreciate that as well. Also, September 4th, the weekend, I believe, is that Thursday, the 2nd through the 6th, is the new King's Calling event. A teaser trailer will be coming out, I think, just before I release this episode. But I have some awesome speakers, some awesome trainers, set up for that. We're still trying to get a venue, but as soon as we do, I'll be sure to release that to everybody. Also, we'll be ramping up the events, we'll be ramping up the coaching, we'll be ramping up all the things that we need to do to make sure that we make the micro adjustment to the world that we've been talking about. I've realized personally that I've been playing too small. I've been talking to my little circle over here, when in reality I need to talk to the big group at large. So, the way that happens is all from you. If you could like, subscribe, comment, and share with anybody and everybody you know, I would be greatly appreciated. That's how we're going to change the world. And with that said, let's get into today's episode. So part of ramping up all of the things that I'm trying to accomplish, the events, the podcast, my one-on-one coaching, the group coaching, which is coming, it's caused a lot of conversations to occur with the people at large in the Instagram world, in the Facebook world, in my own life. And I've realized that a big part of the problem that we have as men is the line between the superficial man and the idealist man is become blurred. And what I mean by that is that the things that we leverage as a metric to determine what a man is or is not is no longer accurate. I don't know why. I can guess. It probably has a lot to do with social media. It has a lot to do with Hollywood, the industries that be, mainstream media. There's a lot of reasons that I can guess are the reason why. But the result of this is we have a bunch of pretenders running around, either A, calling themselves men that are not, or B, attacking other men based on their limited lens on what a man should be. And I ran into this myself on two ways. One, being the culprit of making these distinctions and feeling very arrogant in doing so, as well as receiving these distinctions from other individuals, and I'll explain both. In the culprit side, I was out here for the last better part of 6 months with the podcast has a lot of great content, but the reason behind it, the construct behind it, it was focused very heavily on reclaiming masculinity. And what I realized on my own personal journey is that masculinity, as defined by what we see or what society has deemed, doesn't need to be reclaimed at all. In fact, what I realized is I was using that as a juxtaposition for what was ailing our society. And while I do agree that masculinity is a very real and palpable thing, something that can be measured, I think that I was treating the symptom of the problem. I wasn't treating the root cause. And so what I realized and came to realize is that I was using this broad lens of masculinity and saying these things need to be achieved in order for us to make this shift and so on and so forth. And it was such a limited construct that it made me feel pigeonholed, and then it also made me feel arrogant because I was effectively saying, hey, you need to live like this. And while there are a lot of things that are common, there's also a lot of individuality in there too, and I didn't want to lose that or be presented as one who says, I know better than you and you need to do X, Y, and Z. So that was the culprit side. And then the receiving side is I'm going out and I'm talking to guys and I'm like, hey, I can help you. I can help you find confidence. I can help you find your purpose. I can help you live a more fulfilling and determined life. I can raise you up out of the mud and take you from the cautionary tale of what men shouldn't be to the king of your story, which is the ideal men strive to be. And I can help you get there. I can give you the tool set that can get you there. And most of the time it was received really well, but a couple of times I found these concepts that kind of kept creeping in. I had one guy tell me my voice wasn't deep enough to be a man. I had another guy tell me my beard wasn't long enough to be a man. I mean, these are the quintessential superficial men, and I wanted to address that because I think that's a very pervasive issue. Everything from, gender politics causing the whole dresses on men thing to be confused, to, men taking care of their health and their hygiene, men taking care of their look or caring about how they look, all the way up to these men who believe that they can't treat their women well, otherwise they become a simp, and then, they have all these wild ideas on what men need to be from either a physical aspect, as in looks, dress, fashion, ideology, to what a man should act like, whether that's 100% violent, extremely aggressive, never holding emotion, never showing emotion. These are very surface level ideologies behind what a man should be. And it got me thinking, like, one, how did we get here? And again, I kind of gave a little bit of an answer there. Of like, this idea is most men have not been guided or initiated into manhood, and so they're kind of fumbling their way through the dark of like, what do I hear from movies? What do I hear from women? What do I hear from my family? And nobody's truly been given those guardrails of saying, okay, men are supposed to be X, but not too much this. A great example of this is vulnerability. Society says men should be vulnerable, and I agree. There should be a certain level of vulnerability with men in order to connect with those in his charge, whether that's his queen, his children, his tribe, or his larger community. There needs to be a certain level of humanization that happens in order for him to lead. The problem comes in the fact that nobody tells him the difference between vulnerability and weakness. And the way that I define this for my clients is I explain, if your vulnerability robs you of the confidence of your charge that you can do the job, then you are no longer being vulnerable, you are being weak. I'll give you an example. If I was to share, I can't handle this, quote unquote, this is too hard, quote unquote, and I'm saying that to, say, my queen who's looking to me to hunt and provide, then I am creating the dichotomy that I am not capable, and therefore that vulnerability is now weakness. And so what I do is I help my clients figure out how to negotiate that experience or that feeling of doubt with how to communicate it properly so that they don't lose the confidence in those who they're in charge of. And I say in charge of, meaning it's their responsibility to provide, protect, and lead. So I came to the conclusion that the reason that we have all these superficial parameters and paradigms for what a man should be is because we haven't given the proper tool set to develop men into what they really need to be. And at the end of the day, what masculinity truly is, what men truly are, the North Star that every man should ideally strive to be, is the utilitarian egotist, which is it's a fancy way of saying you're a functional narcissist. Okay? To break that down, the utilitarian side is everything that you talk about, everything that you engage in, everything that you do has a purpose and a function. So for instance, to go back to the example of vulnerability versus weakness, if your intention for vulnerability is to elicit a connection, an emotional adaptation, or a loyalty from the people that you're trying to try and lead, then it is utilitarian and it has a function. However, if you cross the line of vulnerability into weakness and it robs you of the ability to lead, it is no longer utilitarian, it is now weakness, and therefore it is no longer helping, it is hindering. The egotist side of it is that you have to have a certain level of ego, and I covered this in a couple episodes ago. You need to have enough ego and self-respect to be able to say, these are my decisions, I live with the decisions, right, wrong, or otherwise. I'm going to move on those and pivot accordingly. If you lack the ego to make the decisions to lead effectively, then yes, you are going to start lending your path and your process to these superficial concepts. Oh, well, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but that guy has a long beard, and therefore I'm going to follow him because if he has a long beard, then obviously that gives him a metric of understanding and quality of authority within this space. You see how stupid that sounds? But these are real anecdotal things that I come across. Your metric for whether or not you're a man or not should not exist in a superficial realm. It must exist from a functional utilitarian realm. The best example I can give you for this, I'm going to leave you guys with this one. If your concept of masculinity could not survive the fall of society, meaning if society's validation of your masculinity is what makes it masculinity, then it is not true masculinity. Masculinity exists at a meritocracy level. So your ability to deliver on what you are told to deliver on the roles that you're expected to play, give way to your masculinity. So, if the wolves are at the gate and the skill set that you developed or the things that you think make you a man do not lend itself to protecting, providing, or leading your tribe when the wolves are at the gate, then the things you're using as a metric for your manhood are wrong. Pure and simple. It doesn't matter any way you cut it, because at the end of the day, survival is paramount. So if you're wondering about who's wearing a dress, the color of clothes they wear, whether they do their hair or not, how long their beard is, the deepness of their voice, if that is the metric of a man, you are wrong. Plain and simple. It is all about the utility that makes a man, which is why I realized that trying to fix masculinity was a symptom, or the lack of masculinity was a symptom. You first have to give them the utility to become masculine. First function, then social. With that, guys, I really hope you guys have enjoyed these podcasts. I've enjoyed sharing them with you. I hope to connect with you soon.
Your spirit.